Hi, I'm Barbara Lucas, and welcome to the Green Room, where we explore the environmental topics that green up our world. Our guest today is Jennifer Canvasser, Environmental Health Organizer at the Ecology Center in Ann Arbor. We'll be talking about the environmental impacts of a wonderful time of life, babyhood. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
You're a new mother with another one on the way, and so this is a topic that is very dear to your heart.
Absolutely.
In fact, you are a regular contributor to the Huffington Post, which I really enjoyed looking through the various articles you've written, which are excellent. One of them is about baby wearing, and it's been 25 years since I had a baby, so I'm kind of out of the loop, and I've never heard of that. What is that?
It's a practice of keeping your baby close to you and practicing wearing your baby so you have some type of carrier, whether it's made out of cotton or some type of cloth or fabric, and you can keep your baby close, wrapped up on your chest or on your hip or even on your back.
And so there's all kinds of different benefits to the child and to the parent, but I was kind of intrigued thinking about the environmental benefits, of course, the subject of today's show. So, for instance, it would be easier to get on and off of a train or a bus if you live where you have mass transit.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have that big baby stroller, it's less resources and all kinds of, good things. But when I had my children, I had a bad back, so I wouldn't have been able to do that very much. So I just wanted to throw that out, that today we're not going to be making judgments as to what people should be doing in terms of what's better for the world, because everybody has different factors that influence their decisions. But we would like to talk about the big picture, different kinds of considerations. And it reminded me of the talk I heard you do at the University of Michigan. They had that Healthy Holidays open house, and you gave a little talk about consumerism and the impact on the environment.
Absolutely.
So, and of course, the holidays are a time when we buy lots of stuff for our children. There's a little movie that you showed. Tell us about that.
Oh yes, the Center for the New American Dream put together a video called The High Price of Materialism that we showed during that event. And it really looked at many different factors that happen when you place a high value on material objects. And it really looked at how it impacts families and relationships and kids and their upbringing, and of course the environment and just the amount of pollution and toxic chemical consumption and things like that, and how it contributes to the footprint of our families and kids.
And it was interesting, they mentioned something about there's research that shows that the higher materialism you rate, the lower you are in terms of your concern for nature and bike riding, recycling, reuse. It's
charitable giving even, it goes
really?
hand in hand with that, they've said as well. Right, and so it's a generalization, but studies have shown that when people place a high value on material items, they have a lesser value of the other things that you just mentioned.
And so this big picture came up when I started looking at this book called The Zero Footprint Baby by Kia Chatterjee. And she talks about how instead of focusing so much on which product to buy in terms of what it's made out of, or does it have recycled content, maybe we should be looking at, do we even need the product?
Absolutely.
She talks a lot about reuse. She talks about different websites we can go to where we can get total layouts of things that are secondhand. Have you heard of any of those? Did you use any of those when you had your? Yeah,
and I think really first and foremost is figuring out what you really actually truly need, and trying to minimize all the other things, because there are lists upon lists and people upon people who will tell you that you and your baby need so many new things, when really you can get by with just really all you need are the basics. Some diapers, a car seat probably, a way to get your baby around and things like that. And so I think that's the one of the first things you can do is, like, what do I really need and how can I minimize what I'm purchasing, and especially new purchases, obviously.
She talked about a website called Baby Swap or Diaper Swappers.
So I've never actually used that one. We do use, I personally do use cloth diapers, and you can absolutely buy those used. And you can actually buy a lot of baby items used, and most of them, besides car seats, maintain their resale value quite well.
Oh, really?
And so for it works out well for everyone, including the planet, because you're able to buy them at a lower price, and then if you did buy them new, you can sell them to a family who needs them now, and you're obviously reducing the waste.
Yeah, she says that we're buying 3.6 billion toys every year for our children, and she mentions that 30% of China's emissions are making products for other countries' consumption, which I thought was interesting because we often complain about China's carbon footprint,
Right.
but
For us.
maybe we should look at our
Right.
our consumption patterns.
Absolutely.
So we also have the website called storyofstuff.org, which you and I have both looked at and
Absolutely.
enjoy in terms of the life cycle impacts of all the energy that goes into packaging and the manufacture and transport of the items we buy.
There are so many wonderful reuse websites today. I mean, even things like Craigslist. And also, one thing that I am a big fan of is there are private Facebook groups for local moms.
Oh, yeah?
And so it's a group of local families who are able to swap and sell and buy things online. And so it's a nice way to keep it local and small, and that way you're in a trusting community. But absolutely, the online resources are fantastic for being able to swap and find high quality but used products that benefit your family and the planet.
And if you did have to buy new, buying organic cotton, how does that affect the environment?
Well, obviously with the pesticide use that is required for the growth, the manufacturing of cotton and things like that. But yeah, being able to purchase used is always the best option as much as possible. So.
And another thing that was a little different for me reading about this, she says that the housing and transportation choices are actually far greater in terms of the environmental impact of your baby's first year than these smaller choices.
Oh, absolutely. I'd agree with that. And the other thing, the point that was raised in the book is just around advocacy. And I think, when you're a new parent, you're overwhelmed and you're sleep deprived and you have a lot on your plate. And so it can be really difficult to figure out, okay, what is the greenest, healthiest choice for my baby and my family? And it can be overwhelming. And so one way to connect with other people and make a difference is joining, the local community and figuring out, what other bigger picture items I can get involved in terms of making a difference. And I think, transportation and housing is a big one. But they can also, like you said at the beginning of the show, be limiting for some people depending on what your resources are and where you live and what's available. But I think advocacy is another really big picture item that could
Yeah, in fact, that's when I started being an environmental advocate, was when I first had babies. Suddenly, you want the world to be a better place, and you've got to do something about it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. But there are some things, I was kind of thinking about it, she says, if you live somewhere where you have a big house and you drive everywhere, that's going to have a big footprint, but, well, what if you can't change that? Well, maybe you could turn the heat down a degree or two, and in the summer turn it up a degree or two.
Right.
And she made the point that actually there might be added benefits. You get to cuddle more in the winter with your baby, and in the summer you get to be outside more. That's better for your baby anyway.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it was kind of a nice way to look at it. Now, people really want to talk about diapers. She said that's not the biggest issue, but let's talk about diapers.
Right, it happens every couple hours, so
yeah,
people want to talk about it.
Right. So what are some tips on reducing your ecological impact of diapers?
Great question. So I'm a big advocate and fan of cloth diapering. I know in the book it talks about there are pros and cons to each. And I think some of the best options, which she discussed, are if you have to use disposables, using greener alternatives that have less harmful chemicals that are used, that are using less the resources that they're using up. But if you can use cloth diapers, if you have a washer and dryer and you're able to do that, then buying them used is a great option. And then it's just, I think, a fantastic way to be able to reduce your footprint while providing care for your baby. We've really enjoyed it.
Good. She mentions line drying being
instead of the dryer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And of course, she says if you can afford to buy, really energy efficient washer, that would be great.
Right. And using biodegradable soaps, for example. Yep. And just how you're washing your diapers, which she also talks about in the book. Just the types of settings you're using. You know, if you're washing them for an hour and a half versus 45 minutes, and things like that. So.
And doing full loads.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because she also made the point that, even though some things might cost a lot, there might be other ways to save money. For instance, a lot of people put a lot of money into decorating their nursery, whereas maybe they could be using that money to, for instance, insulate their attic, and that actually that might be more beneficial to the child's future world that they're going to live in.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of a different way of looking at things.
Yeah. And I think that's the same example she used with the cloth diapering, is it is a higher cost up front.
Yeah.
But then over the long run, especially if you have multiple children that you're able to use the diapers for, you're really saving.
True. And obviously breastfeeding is better for the environment because you're not buying a product, but not everybody can breastfeed for a variety of reasons. So let's talk about the carbon footprint of formula. We've got to feed and raise the cows, we have to process and sterilize and package and transport. So how can we reduce that footprint?
Donor milk.
So
I'm a big advocate of breast milk, donor milk.
Okay.
And there's a big movement nowadays to bring that back. You know, in past there have been milk sharing among moms and in neighborhoods and communities, and it's really coming back. So there are milk banks that are able to provide milk to more fragile infants, but in babies who are healthy, you can have milk sharing opportunities that are available through connections online that you can make. So that's a really good one too.
So you said it's coming back. Do you mean that used to be a traditional thing throughout history and now?
Exactly, and I think it kind of during the 80s and 90s wasn't as popular, and I think over probably the last 5 to 10 years, people there are more advocates in the human milk banking world that are trying to raise the awareness around the importance of breast milk for infants, and that if you can't breastfeed, formula is not your only option. There are other moms who have excess milk who are able and willing to share that with other babies.
That's great.
I've actually provided donor milk myself, so.
Great. So,
and that's obviously reduces not only is it healthy and better for the baby, but then you're reducing the footprint of the manufacturing process, the packaging, and everything that you just named.
Yeah. Great. So if you had to choose between soy and dairy, do you know how those weigh in terms of footprints?
You know, I actually can't speak on that in terms of the environmental impacts on soy versus bovine formula.
Well, just to throw out what she said, she thinks they're about equal.
Okay.
And she was saying that, try to buy powdered instead of
the liquid. Because
of the weight in terms of transporting, takes more energy. Try to reduce the packaging, recycle the packaging.
Right.
She also said don't go to the store every day to buy it, buy in bulk, things like that.
Right. That's absolutely true. And I can't emphasize the importance of just, trying the breast milk or donor milk enough. With the lactation support, you might be able to avoid having to purchase formula again. Sometimes it's absolutely necessary and we need it, but.
That's great. So how about the food? The baby in the second part of their first year can start eating. How can we reduce the impact environmentally?
She talked a little bit about this book in the book about baby-led weaning or with the food processing, and so making sure that one is you're either breastfeeding or if you have to provide formula for as long as possible, and then supplementing with foods that the baby is already interested in that they see you eating with appropriate portions and things like that. But that way you're having to hopefully avoid some of the more processed baby food, and whenever you can, making it yourself at home. It's really actually quite simple, and you can make it in bulk and you can freeze it. But it's also really wonderful for the child to start eating what you're eating, which actually can happen earlier than a lot of people may imagine. You don't have to start with rice cereal, for example.
I used to blend up some different things and put them in ice cube trays. And
Absolutely.
pop them out and put them in the freezer.
Yeah, but avocado and bananas, for example, are things that you don't require cooking and that you can easily make at home that are nutritious for your baby.
So essentially, they can go from breast milk to whatever you're eating, just maybe mashed up a bit or whatever.
Right, in little tiny pieces or whatever it might be.
And she also makes the point of just not wasting. I mean, whether you're a baby or an adult, not wasting food is super important.
Absolutely, that is so huge. I think that many families do waste a lot of food, and you go to someone's house and their fridge is just packed with like just things that are not even good anymore because they've let it go to waste. And so I think being mindful of what's in your fridge and making sure that you're paying attention to when it was there and making sure that you eat it and consume it before it goes bad. And if you do have to throw it out, making sure you compost instead of tossing it in the trash.
Lots of great tips. Thanks. That's good. So how can people get more information about these topics?
There are a lot of wonderful websites and online resources available. So the first you can go to is Ecology Center. It's a website. It's ecocenter.org. We also run a website called healthystuff.org where we've tested thousands of products, including a lot of baby and children's products for toxic chemicals. We're actually just finishing up a car seat study right now where we've tested infant and toddler car seats for specifically for flame retardants, but other toxic chemicals as well. And we talk about how can we reduce our consumption of even car seats, and we talk about that in the report that's coming out. But besides that, the Story of Stuff, which you mentioned, the Center for the New American Dream, and then Healthy Child, Healthy World is another one that really focuses on not only babyhood and motherhood, but all the way up through childhood and ways that we can maintain a healthy environment for our planet and for our kids.
Great. Yeah, we do want people to go see the ecocenter.org website and look up under the staff bios because there's a lot of good links to like your Huffington Post articles and things like that.
Yeah, thank you, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here today. It's been really great talking about this.
Thank you. You too.
For an online archive of today's show, go to ewashita.org/greenroom. Thanks for joining us here in the Green Room.